Hey everyone, welcome to Balanced Bodybuilding Radio. I am Lee Marie. I am a NPC competitor and a Glam Girl Bikini coach, and I am here with my coach and my co-host.
Hey guys, it's Amy Inger, Glam Girl Bikini founder and CEO.
And we are talking about how to diet the best. What is the best way to hit your goals as far as diet goes? Is it a meal plan? Is it counting macros? Is it flexible dieting? Is it intuitive eating? What is the best way long term to maintain your weight? But first, we have our random question. And I know this comes out on Thursday, but we're recording on the 4th of July. So, random question of the day is, what is the best and worst parade candy?
Parade candy?
When was the last time you had parade candy, Amy?
I don't think I ever was like, I don't think I've ever eaten it because I was just always
What?
afraid when they would throw stuff at you where it came from. I don't know.
What was your childhood like?
I think I did catch something, but maybe like, I don't know, like Hubba Bubba or, those like
Yeah.
bubble gum things or suckers. But I mean,
Suckers are good.
are we talking best as in health wise? Is that what you mean?
No,
Or
just the
just like
most
tastiest?
random. What did you like when you were a kid? But if you didn't eat it when you were a kid.
Yeah. I never got into the whole like people throwing
Oh
candy. I
man,
don't think
parades were the best. Okay, so
that's
best
funny.
parade candy, it would be I think when I was a kid, it would be if you could get one of those Tootsie Roll Pops, like an actual like the big
Oh yeah.
suckers.
Yeah.
And the worst was just regular Tootsie Rolls because everybody throws those. I mean, they're just
Yeah.
like
They
the
do throw a lot of those. I like the flavored Tootsie Rolls though.
I like the fruity ones.
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
good.
And I think I've only had this maybe once or twice in my life, but they actually make Tootsie Roll Pops that are filled with the fruity ones instead of the
Oh,
chocolate, and those
okay.
are pretty amazing. Okay, so follow up bonus question: have you ever been in a parade?
Yes.
Been on a float? What did you do?
No, I wasn't on a float, but I walked in a parade. I was my high school job in the summers was coaching baseball for this organization. And it was called Wildcat. And I was in the like Wildcat, like, I don't know. I had to wear my like, uniform that I wore.
Oh, cool!
It's very random.
That's awesome,
It
Coach
wasn't like a
Amy.
pageant queen or anything.
Oh, that would have been cool. So I was in a parade twice. One time I wasn't a pageant queen. I never did those. I always wanted to, but my friend was. She was Miss something. And I worked at the Dairy Queen, and there was a parade in that town. It was a tiny little town.
Mhm.
And there was like four of us working that day. It was a tiny little Dairy Queen, four of us working that day, and nobody was there because everyone was at the parade. So two of us just skipped out and went in our outfits and just walked along the float with her. Everybody got so excited because we were dressed in Dairy Queen, and they thought we were like giving away free ice cream or something, but we just kind of crashed the parade. And then I was in one other time because my brother used to own a grocery store and we had a float. Super random.
Yeah, I actually have one other random one. My brother-in-law in Indiana, he was the youngest prosecutor ever elected for office. So, and it was a Halloween parade randomly. So, like, my kids were dressed up in like costumes, but then we also had like vote for Uncle Otto and
That's
um,
amazing. That
his
is
name's
amazing.
Otto. So it was a political one. I will take
I
that back.
love
And
that.
I think I was a candy thrower,
Oh,
but
nice.
I
Okay.
never was on the receiving end of that. But it's very
That's
exciting when you're
awesome.
throwing it because people really like you.
Yeah. Yes, they do, especially kids. That is awesome. Well, I hope everyone gets to a parade today. It's really hot, but they're really fun, and especially if you have kids. But we're going to talk about dieting and hitting your goals in the improvement season or if your lifestyle. So, if you're in prep, you obviously have a very strict what, either a meal plan or if your coach gives you macros, whatever it is, you have to stick to that. And there is not room for flexibility because you're in prep, you have a goal. But in the improvement season, there's different approaches to take. And if you are a lifestyle client, just, trying to lose weight, but not trying to get on stage, there are different ways to approach it. So we're going to talk about three of the most common in our industry, and that is following a meal plan given to you by your coach, usually, or following macros and flexible dieting. So you have a budget of calories and then you have numbers of protein, carbs, and fats that you need to hit, but you can mix up the foods you have during a day. And then intuitive eating, which is going by hunger and fullness cues and really kind of paying attention to what your body wants and what it needs. So we're going to break down each one, talk about pros and cons, and who would be the ideal client to fit with this. So number one, we're going to tackle is meal plans. So give us a couple of thoughts on meal plans.
Well, I think of meal plans as like training wheels. And I think for a first time client, whether it's a competitor or a lifestyle client, I feel like following a meal plan can help them understand like what the structure of different things look like, because a lot of times they get very overwhelmed with just, given numbers to hit and trying to figure out what foods. I find that there's a lot of confusion on like what's healthy and like what I should do. So sometimes they need a little bit more of it like laid out for them. I'm not a huge fan of just the one food choices. People have like aversions and different things, and you need variety in your diet. So I always like to follow like more of a meal exchange when it comes to a meal plan where you're given like 10 lean protein options, like 10 different carb choices, or like what does a fat with a carb in it look like, and give them 6 different options. I feel like that's the easiest way to do it. And then it also teaches them, if they are working out, kind of like what a pre and post workout meal looks like. So I feel like those are where everybody should start. That's where I started. I unfortunately had several years where it was just like one food choice. And I don't think that creates a very good relationship with food. Um, so I do think you need to kind of like marry the situation where they're, able to pick and choose, but also have some structure so that they can get started with that.
And I think it's different too if you have a coach who's giving you a meal plan who can also give you something that is individual to you and your needs, and also get your feedback too. I think meal plan also probably under that category would be things like following certain diet plans. I know when I was younger, there used to be like diet plans that you would see in like magazines. It would be like, follow this daily plan or whatever. And it literally would tell you exactly what to eat. So something like that, or something like a diet like the keto diet or Whole30, or some more specific diet that tells you exactly what foods to eat would kind of fall under this. But let's go through some of the pros for a
Okay.
meal plan. So one is it is easy to make sure that you're in a calorie deficit and losing weight. So if that is your goal, it is easy for the coach, with a little trial and error, getting your biofeedback, like, are you actually losing weight, or are you gaining weight or maintaining? It's easy to tweak amounts of foods and make sure, guarantee that you're in that calorie deficit to make progress.
Yeah. And it makes it easy for the coach to just make those adjustments because you're eating consistently certain food choices and measurements of those. And so if they hit a point of stall or plateau, then it's really easy to just make an adjustment, like pull something out and rework the math or whatever.
And it's less work for you as the athlete. The coach pretty much does the work for you. You just
Mhm.
read the foods, you pick the foods, you measure them, you eat them. So it's less mental energy. You kind of just, here's what I'm eating, go. And
Yeah.
it also makes it easy to plan ahead too. If you're meal prepping in bulk. You just, you know exactly what you're going to eat that week. You just
Hmm.
do it and you go. So like busy people, people that work a
Hmm.
lot, moms, people that travel for work, things like that. I know a lot of clients that are like, just tell me what to eat. I don't want to think.
Yeah. And I think too, just beginners in general, like just getting their feet wet, there's so many things that are overwhelming them that they have to learn and change. And I've heard of one coach, he would always say, like, you know, when people are first starting out, you just give them the dog food diet where you just like eat the same things all the time. And it's just more to like take your brain power out of it so that you can focus on like adopting these new habits and things like that, where you don't have to worry about also thinking about planning, like you said. And then just like that food planning and prep work, you know, that in itself takes a lot of time and effort, is just learning how to like make your own food. Because a lot of people, if they're just starting out, maybe they're having an extreme lifestyle change where they're used to going out to eat and getting takeout, and now they're having to make like their own proteins and all of that. So, I mean, I've heard of people like taking hours and hours to portion out their food and to cook it. Because when you're not used to it, you don't really know like the hacks that can be like shortcuts and things like that. So yeah, the easier you can make it and more time efficient, the better.
I would say too, like if you think when you think about bikini competitors and dieting, or you think about even lifestyle, losing weight, dieting, eating less food, try meal prepping for a whole week on a whole foods meal plan. That is a lot of food. You can
Yeah.
actually eat a lot of food losing weight.
Hmm.
Okay, so
Yeah.
another pro is that it's easy to make sure that you're hitting all of your essential vitamins, minerals, nutrients, your micronutrients, but also your
Hmm.
macronutrients as well. And again, this takes a little more work on the coach's side, but they can make sure, you know, whether they're a registered dietitian, sports nutritionist, whatever, they're going to have that knowledge to make sure that you're hitting those vitamins and minerals and the nutrients that you need. And then they
Hmm.
can also recommend supplements to fill it in. You know, if you're like, yeah, I never eat fish, you know, they can recommend something
Hmm.
else to replace that or something like that. But they can make sure
Yeah.
that you're hitting all of those within the week.
Yeah. And I think with that being said, is like we're going to get into flexible dieting and tracking macros. So we always have our clients track fiber in addition. But with a set meal plan, one of the pros is that your coach is going to plan that you have enough servings of fruits and vegetables
Mm-hmm.
for the daily requirements. They're going to make sure you're getting enough fiber. And a lot of times when people just get the protein, carbs, and fat macros, they'll use up all their carbs for fun carbs, as I like to put it, where vegetables aren't as fun. And so with meal plans, like you said, you know, getting your servings of fruits and vegetables would be really important there. So let's go into some of the cons with meal plans. And I think the same situation can kind of happen is just if we're eating the same types of foods every day and our plan doesn't change. So I think it's really important for coaches from an ethical standpoint to at least change up a client's meal plan. If you're like not giving 10 options every time, you need to change up their meal plan at least every 4 weeks, because their gut flora and their digestive tract needs variety in foods. And if you eat the same foods every time, you're very likely to get like some dysbiosis and some imbalances. And then you can also get, you know, deficiencies in certain micronutrients too, because you're not getting as much variety. And if you're kind of like gravitating to the same foods every single day, then that can cause problems as well. So it's kind of like a catch 22, like it has some good parts and then some bad parts. But
Yeah, I think mental fatigue is huge too. So just
mhm.
knowing that if you have a meal plan, knowing your coach is gonna refresh it every 4 weeks,
Mhm.
and more if you need, like, you know, more often if you're stalled or something, like hopefully you're getting changes to your meal plans on a weekly basis if you need it, but especially just for variety's sake, for the mental fatigue. I know I fall into this
Mhm.
category sometimes, and I know some of my clients do, where we figure out something where we're comfortable making it, it's really easy, and so we just stick to it for a long time.
Mhm.
And then if we get mentally fatigued or just downright sick of something,
Mhm.
but that's all we prepped for that week. The chances are that we're not going to have the discipline to stick on that plan. And so then the next con would be that there's not much room for flexibility within a meal plan with social situations or unforeseen circumstances. So we all
Mhm.
know you can plan, but if something happens, like, I mean, I just put a couple examples in there, but like, let's say you get called for jury duty and you're stuck for 6 8 hours somewhere where you don't have access to your meal plan, or let's say you have to work overtime and you didn't bring your food, or you get stuck waiting in an accident in the car or something and you just really want to go get fast food, or stop somewhere and pick up something to eat. So there's not a lot of flexibility for things like that happen unless you have the knowledge where you're like, oh, I could go to the grocery store and just get, like chicken from the deli or something and piece it together and make it work.
Mhm.
But yeah, the flexibility with things you can't control is a little bit harder. And then you might need to plan to bring extra meals along with you. I know something that I always try to do is bring my post-workout meal, whether it's in like a cooler or something in my car. I know by the time I get out of the gym, if I don't have that meal waiting for me or that shake waiting for me, I'm probably not going to make some good decisions.
Okay. Yeah, I think the biggest negative about meal plans, and this is something that I've experienced, is like once that goal disappears and the structure disappears, it's kind of like having a crutch, or you're not really empowered to make decisions and pivot and use that mental capacity. And we're kind of like putting foods in a like good or bad category. It's never a good thing. And so a lot of times, like if you're restricted from like certain foods being off the list and never being able to eat them, but you enjoy them, then it makes it really hard when you're not sticking to that meal plan and kind of going overboard. It's like that bad boy mentality. The more like,
Yeah.
you aren't allowed to like eat something, the more appealing it looks. And so I think that's where meal plans really fall short, is that food relationship thing, where a lot of times people will like coin foods bad or good, where we need like a little bit of gray. So I think maybe that segues best into flexible dieting, which I think that kind of is where we're going next with this.
Yeah. So next level up would be flexible dieting. So that means you are given usually a set amount of calories, but then also you're given a set amount in grams, usually of protein, fats, and carbs that you need to hit each day. And what we usually do is give people a range. So, we say something like 3 to 5 grams, hit within 3 to 5 grams of protein, 3 to 5 grams of carbs, and in 1 to 3 grams of fats, because fats are higher in calories. And that kind of gives you a little bit of leeway to be able to hit those numbers pretty much every day. And that is very close to accurate. I mean, you will make progress on that. And so, some of the pros for flexible dieting is that you can make room for things you crave while still hitting your goals. And it can make your dieting process more enjoyable. So, especially in the improvement season, or, as a lifestyle, when you're losing weight just without thinking about a competition, you might have a little bit more room, a little bit more leeway to add in some of those things. And then it also can kind of take away some of that good or bad food. It can take food off the pedestal. I still remember when I first discovered flexible dieting and I first logged that I ate a cookie, and it wasn't like a protein cookie, it was like a cookie. And I put it in there, and the next day it was like, I'm still alive. Like, I ate a cookie and I didn't go off the walls. Like, it kind of
Yeah.
blew my mind. And
Yeah.
it really does. Like, if I have a client that's flexible dieting and they're like, I'm just having a hard time not snacking at night, it's like, give me specifics. Let's try and log it. We might have to tackle some habits and things like that. But first, let's tackle, are you, binging on a food because you think you can't have it? Because you can. Usually you can figure out how to put it into your macros.
Yeah. I feel like so a little bit of why I think you were saying that it's a better thing for competitors to do in the improvement season, and then also for lifestyle, is that there is room for error
Mhm.
with packages.
Yeah.
So whether or not you can scan it on MyFitnessPal, um, food companies can be off by 30 to 25% on what they're actually reporting. And I've done experiments where I'll just take like a protein cookie. Like for example, No Cow makes these cookies and I was eating them and I realized, the package said X amount of calories, like this many carbs, fats, and protein, and I would scan it. But I had gotten to a point where I was eating those every day and I was finding that I was actually gaining weight. So then I looked at the label and
Mm.
it said like X amount of grams per cookie.
Mhm.
Well, every cookie weighs different.
Oh,
Some
mhm.
of them weighed 70 grams, some weighed 60, some weighed 55. And when you're mixing ingredients in a recipe, if there's more like chocolate chip chunks in that cookie, it's going to be heavier, like in fat and sugars. So it's really difficult, which is why I think a lot of the companies like Bam Body Nutrition and different companies have gotten in trouble for the way that they report
Mhm.
their things. So if you're in strict contest prep, it does make a huge variable for your coach to have to like factor in that things could be off. And I
Mhm.
mean, you can even notice like with like tortillas and breads and stuff, if you weigh them, they'll
Mhm.
all weigh differently. So you just have to be really careful with prepackaged food. And it's kind of like an estimate. Like if you think about a loaf of bread, like the end versus like the middle, it's going to weigh a lot different. And the composition is going to be a little bit different. If you go to a restaurant, for example, let's say you go to Chipotle and
Mhm.
they have like everything listed out, but the person scooping the chicken or the person scooping the guacamole gives you a huge heaping serving and it's not getting weighed. And then like oils could be added very heavily on vegetables or proteins and then less. So that's where some of this comes into play where it's not super, super accurate. So it's just going to be a little bit more challenging to hit your deficit, even if you are calculating at MyFitnessPal, just because of that margin of error that comes with packaged foods.
Mhm.
So,
I think you just hit like almost all of my cons just right in
oh,
that. Just
sorry.
perfect. Just perfect. I think, but going off of that, I think flexible dieting is a great tool to use if your goal is eventually to be an intuitive eater
Yeah.
because of this and because
Uh-huh.
I think it's a good practice with flexible dieting. Just because you can eat something doesn't mean that you should eat it every meal or even every day, which is why I love the idea of the 80-20 rule within flexible dieting. So
Mhm.
flexible dieting, like tracking, maybe that means that one day you want to have turkey and the next day you want to have ground beef and the next day you might want to have salmon. Those are all still whole foods. You can prepare them yourself so you can weigh them, but you're still being
Mhm.
flexible. And then the
Mhm.
next day you want to have a protein cookie, and then that means like 80% of the time you're still eating those whole foods, those nutrient dense foods, the foods that are going to fill you up the most, that you control those calories that you're accurately tracking. And then 20% of the time you're doing, the food that you might not be quite accurate, but you're still tracking it. So
Mhm.
you're still going to loosely control the calories that are going in. So I like to have my clients do still try and practice that 80-20 rule, with most of the time having, the whole foods, concentrating on, especially with carb sources, concentrating on one ingredient carbs, so carbs that you control, like measuring out, like potatoes and rice and oats and fruit. And I think fruit is a big one. That is a huge one. I mean, the difference between sizes of apples or bananas, if you're not weighing those out, and let's be honest, like, if you go to the store and you grab an apple, you don't know if that's 200 grams or 400 grams, depending on the size of it, too. So I love the flexibility, but it also, on the other side of it, it does take discipline to stick with those things and accurately track.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, as I was talking about with the meal plans with the fiber thing, I think it makes a big difference if on the flexible dieting if you consider that you have to track fiber as your fourth macronutrient, um, because then that kind of limits you from just eating all like Pop Tarts for your carbs and making sure that you're getting some micronutrients that are in there. But it does help in certain ways, like the gut, because of just getting food variety as well.
Uh,
So, all right. So we're kind of moving into like the intuitive eating you had mentioned. I like how you have these tiered because I feel like it's like beginner training wheels, flexible dieting, we're like middle of the road, like
mhm.
balance, more gray, not as much. Um, Another thing too, like before we move on to intuitive eating, I just wanted to add, so I've had clients that are like vegans and vegetarians, and it's really hard to design a meal plan for those individuals because the food choices are very, it's it's hard to do a set meal plan for like a vegan and things. So it's better if I can teach them kind of how to track from the
Mhm,
beginning.
mhm,
So anybody that has like special food like intolerances or allergies and things like that, it's it's more optimal to do the flexible dieting approach because then they can just put in the foods that their bodies aren't reacting to in a negative way. So it kind of accounts for that, which is good because a set meal plan, what if there's like a bunch of options that really don't work for you, right?
mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
so
I would just say too, before we move on, that the way that we do most of the time, the way that we work with our clients at Glam Girl is we do a combination of the two. And so we can kind of find out where the client is when they come to us. Like, have you ever done any, like, what is your dieting history? Have you ever tried any other diets? Have you had success with them? Have you not? What did you like? What did you not? And you can ask questions that kind of tell you how much the client knows about nutrition, and then we usually give both. So we'll give a meal
mhm,
plan, but the meal plan has a lot of different choices. Like you
mhm,
said, it has at least 10 different lean proteins to choose from. You might have six different fats with carb sources. You might have like your pure fats, things like that. They give them variety, vegetables, all that kind of stuff. But then we also give them the macros and we have them track their foods in MyFitnessPal. And that's really helpful as a coach because we can go back. If you have a client that's like, well, my digestion was super off yesterday, we can go back and look at what they ate the last couple of days and try to pinpoint it or look at their fiber or something like that. And so I do have some of my clients where I'm like, just focus on hitting the meal plan, like follow it exactly. And then some where I'm like, okay, as long as you hit your macros, you know how to hit your fiber and your protein and your carbs and all of that. And then some do like a combination of both. Like I follow a combination of both. For the most part, I hit all my meals on my meal plan, but every once in a while, I'll hit something else, especially when I'm in the improvement season too. So like a combination of both, I think is the best way to set up for getting the knowledge and the intuition that you need
mhm.
going into the third one that we're going to talk about, which is graduating to intuitive eating.
Yeah, and it gives you the tools so that you have like the background of that. But
Yeah.
also, I feel like with all of these, it's super important that we look at the mental side of a client as well, because we're really empowering them to be in charge of their meal plan. So you're going to be planning for yourself on things like with flexible dieting. So it's just important for them to always be learning and leveling up. So intuitive eating for me, I feel like this one is kind of tricky. So with intuitive eating, the true definition of it versus like mindful eating, intuitive eating really is you as a competitor, especially after a show or when you're dieting for a show, when your body fat's very low, your leptin, which is your satiety hormone, it gets secreted out of your fat cells. So if you have like zero fat cells, you're not going to have the normal satiety hormones that everybody walking on the street has. You're going to have way higher ghrelin. So your hormones are very off. And so you can't really trust your body to cue you when you're full. You're never going to feel full. You're always going to feel hungry. And as you get closer to the show, this is very prevalent. So I think in this situation, we just have to know that we have to be in a good place mentally and physically far enough away from a dieting phase, deep into an improvement season is where this could make sense. But at the end of the day, it's also not the most accurate. So it just has to be like the perfect kind of setting for this to happen. Do you want to explain that a little bit more on like what
Yeah.
that looks like?
Absolutely. So if you are still a competitor, so as long as you have competitions in mind, unless you're doing something like a year long, 2 year long off season, I would say you should probably be tracking. Even with a little more flexibility in your off season, you do have those, like especially right after a show, you need to be following that recovery diet pretty closely and giving a lot of feedback to your coach. So like if you do have a day where you're like, I just went way over and I binged on this and this, like let your coach know so you can work through that together. And then I would say with intuitive eating, if you are deep in an improvement season, I think there are days you can bring it in. Maybe you have 1 day a week or one meal a week that you're intuitive eating. Or even if you are a lifestyle competitor or a lifestyle client that you want to hit a goal, I would say long term, if you're not planning to compete, intuitive eating would be the goal. But I also like to keep tracking in every once in a while. So every once in a while, maybe for a week, track what you're eating just to make sure you are hitting your protein. Or if you do want to lose a few pounds, bring that tracking tool back in to just rein it in, start measuring your foods again, things like that. I think for me, I've been tracking my food. I can look back in my fitness pal, but probably for 10 years at least. So I feel like I have the knowledge. If I have the self-discipline, I have the knowledge to be able to intuitively eat and pretty much stick to the calories that I'm on, hit my protein, hit my carbs. But I know that probably 2, 3 months in, I would need to bring back tracking for a couple of weeks just to make sure I'm hitting everything. Or if my weight starts to creep up or I start to lose too much weight, you also have to be in tune with your energy levels, your sleep levels, and your hormones. So the week before I get my cycle, I'm starving. Like my
Mhm.
hunger cues are just sky high. If I don't get enough sleep, I'm going to crave things like sugary carbs, way too much caffeine, things like that. So you need to learn self-awareness and what foods your body actually needs. So it is a huge education to be able to intuitively eat, but that's kind of always the goal with tracking, with learning what certain foods do for us weight-wise, keeping us at a healthy body weight, giving us, good levels of energy. And I think with that amount of like the years of knowledge and education, also learning what portion sizes look like, actual portion sizes. I think there's things like nut butters that I will need to measure for my entire life. I don't think I will ever be able to eyeball peanut butter or almond butter or anything like that. But I think I can pretty much eyeball what 4 ounces of chicken looks like, things like that. That would work in an improvement season or a lifestyle, to just kind of maintain. So, and then if you are intuitive eating, I also am a huge proponent of tracking what your body weight is at or your measurements, or if you have like a pair of jeans that you track with or something like that, just so that you're making sure that you are staying within what you feel comfortable with body weight wise.
Sorry, I realized I was on mute.
Oh,
Um,
it's like you're talking, I
so,
can't hear you.
so my practical example is, somebody that's been in an improvement season for like 2 years, they're taking a considerable amount of time off. They're kind of burnt out on tracking.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I find intuitive eating just to get a mental break from tracking. I think that's where it comes into play the best with competitors. And if they're in very, very deep into improvement season, their body weight's pretty much maintaining. I've
Mm-hmm.
noticed that I can have them do that. Or, if I know that they're one of those people that, they're at a good place mentally
Mm-hmm.
with their food and things like that. However, with the caveat that even then, when they come back to tracking, we realize that they'd been under eating protein
Mm-hmm.
9 times out of 10
Mm-hmm.
from just my own personal experience, just because it does become very difficult. What's not getting weighed, what's not getting measured, it still is eyeballing, yes, it's okay, but like unless you're doing like certain number of egg whites and like 6 egg whites is X amount of protein,
Mhm.
those are easy to kind of go for. But yeah, I just find that they'll undereat protein
That's interesting.
primarily.
Why
Yeah.
do you think that is? Like protein versus other macronutrients, fats and carbs.
I think just when you're deep into an improvement season, you don't have like you have enough body fat to have the right kind of hunger cues and things like that.
Hmm.
Protein tends to make us like more satiated and full. And I just think that it's one of those that if we're not intentional about it, we can kind of let it go to the wayside. I know that's not typical for you because you really enjoy protein. It's your favorite macronutrient, but a lot of people, they'll kind of just not eat as much. It
Hmm.
just happens. I don't know why. It
No, I think
just
that's a really good point, actually, that it is the macronutrient that fills us up. And when we get to that healthy body point, also in improvement season, if you're not as active, I think the one thing with me is I'm pretty much always really active. My steps stay pretty high in the improvement season. I work out almost every day. I love doing cardio. Like literally it's one of my favorite things. So even when we bring it down, it's hardly ever out. And like my one of my favorite things would be like to go try out a new, CrossFit gym with my neighbor or something like that. Like it's just I'm so active throughout the day. And I think that my metabolism is pretty high. And so that might be one reason I never have a hard time hitting my protein is that I'm always hungry, literally. But
yeah. And I think too, like when you're in the improvement season, depending on what your body fat is, you actually have to have a little bit more to grow.
mhm,
So I just think, too, that it can be not enough for growth. And then, yeah, like when we come back and they're ready, they've kind of had that mental break and that mental reset. We come back, we like track what we're eating currently. When they do the audit, it's
mhm.
always too low of protein. And
Interesting.
they just think that they're eating enough and they're just not. It's very
Wow.
odd. And it's not been, I mean, it's been like over the last 10 years that I've been
Yeah.
coaching people because
Yeah.
I've just
And
seen
what
that
about
trend.
fats and carbs? Do you think that's more individual, whether someone is prefers eating higher fats or higher carbs?
I just noticed that those are really easy to find. And see, that's the problem too, is that protein, you have to be intentional about adding it in, right? Whereas fats and carbs are very abundant in
Yep.
our Western world here. And a lot of things are obesogenic foods where they have high fat and high carb, which is why we have like a problem with
Yeah.
obesity in this country. And a lot of things are low protein.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, you have to be like strategic about it takes extra effort. And I think we've both been doing it so long that we know like how to get in extra protein. And for me, like it's my hardest one to stay under. Like I could go way over on protein just because I'm just that kind of person. But like I think a lot of people are actually really under eating protein. And I think that's one of the first steps, like when you're first starting any sort of dieting, that's a huge eye opener for
Mm-hmm.
beginners that I've noticed is that they're always under eating protein.
Yeah, for sure. And I think maybe sometimes as well, just as you start tracking your foods and getting your body on a routine, your metabolism loves that. It loves consistency. It loves getting, a protein bolus or like getting food and then having a rest to, fully digest and then get yourself hungry again versus just snacking all the time or going hours and hours and hours without eating and then eating a ton. And but I find that with people that have a hard time hitting their calories or hitting their protein, especially, the more they practice just, their small meals every 2 to 3 hours, the more their metabolism does get stoked and they find it a lot easier to hit those numbers as they gradually are hungry for that protein, which is really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think
Okay.
this is a good episode. I really enjoyed it because it's
Mhm.
definitely the 3 tiers of where you're at in
Yeah.
your
I liked your
balanced
training.
bodybuilding radio
Yeah.
journey.
I like your training wheels analogy. So
Thanks.
starting off with a meal plan is a great idea. And even if you
Mhm.
get a coach that will give you a meal plan and teach you how to track the macros as well, and then you kind of take the training wheels off and you start riding the bike with the
Mhm.
flexible dieting, and then I don't know, the intuitive eating might be graduating up to maybe like a unicycle or something. That one's a little bit tricky to balance, but if you have
Uh-huh.
really good skill and balance, I think you
Mhm.
can eventually make it work. And I think having a coach that can take you through that is really important as well. So if any of
Yeah.
you listening out there want to let us know where you're at in your nutrition journey, what you've had success with, your favorite way to diet. If you want some, education, some help with that, you can always shoot us a DM. You can click the link in our bio of our Instagram at Balanced Bodybuilding Radio, or you can go to glamgirlbikini.com and click the get started button, and you can book a free consultation call with one of us coaches,
Yeah.
and we can chat with you on how to hit your goals.
Awesome. Thanks for
All
listening,
right.
guys.